Hello. All week this week there are a number of videos being released and some webinars about what happened on February the 14th, 1995. My name's Ian Barker and I'm an Embarcadero MVP for the United States. I'm based in Texas, but as you can tell from my accent, my broad Texan accent, I actually was born in the United Kingdom, so I still do a lot of programs and things like that for the UK and the US. And the thing that happened on February the 14th, 1995, which affects the way I work every single day, was that Delphi, the programming language, was released. Now, to understand what Delphi means to me, we'll just have a little bit of history. Back when I was at school, when I was about 14 years old, I was in the physics class, and in those days, there was only one computer in the entire school. It was in the 1970s, and nobody was allowed to touch it unless they did the top set of physics, and they were one of the very senior boys or girls, mostly boys, unfortunately, and it was just forbidden to touch it. And also in those days, it was still very old-fashioned in the United Kingdom, and you called the teacher sir, and you would stand up when he came into the classroom and sit down when he told you to, and things like that. And there I was sitting in physics, and all of a sudden this boy burst into the room, walked past the physics teacher and just nodded, a surly nod at him, went and sat down in the corner and touched the hallowed computer, the only computer in the school, pressed the power button. We're all like, oh, this is incredible. And after a few seconds of it heating up, because they still did that in those days, he typed on the keyboard and the screen burst into life with loads of text. And I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I thought, that is what I want to do as a job. Now, back in those days, if you wanted to do computer science, you had to be very, very good at math. You had to go to university. In the UK, that meant very few select universities. It was not a widely taught subject in the 1970s. And it was a struggle. But anyway, I managed to persevere and taught myself how to program, and then went and learned how to use COBOL. So for a long time I was a COBOL programmer, and I also learnt C because I worked on a lot of Unix machines. So I was a programmer, and it was okay. Then Visual Basic was released, and Visual Basic was a lot easier to use. It was much more visual than C or COBOL, as you can imagine. And it was okay, but there were lots of things that were not okay with Visual Basic. There's a thing called the DLL hell, if any of you remember that, where you would get various libraries and things like that would be incompatible, and things would just randomly not work, and it was part of the operating system, or some file was corrupt, or some runtime was the wrong version, and your programs would stop working through no fault of your own. And then I saw a magazine article, and the magazine article talked about this new version of a visual programming language that was available, was about to be released, and that was Delphi from Borland, as it was at the time. And I looked at this magazine article with the screenshots on pre-announcing the product, and a light bulb opened up. Right away, I knew this was going to be the thing that would make me be able to program like I'd imagined when all those years back when I was a 14-year-old boy. I'd be able to do things that I wanted to do rather than struggle against COBOL, which was very rigid and difficult, C, which was mind-bendingly complex to do even the most simple tasks, and Visual Basic, which just would dump all over you the minute you did one tiny little thing wrong, like spell a variable in capital letters instead of lowercase and things like that. So Delphi came along, and I ordered it on the very first day it was released. I just knew it was going to work for me. I've still got the invoice as well, actually, to prove it. And now I go around and tell people that Delphi is my superpower. And that is a bit of a crazy thing to say, but it really is. I'm a very prolific programmer. I work for myself, although I do work quite exclusively for a number of software houses in the UK and a few organizations in the United States as well. When I say prolific, I mean really, really prolific. There are around about several hundred apps running in 66 countries worldwide. All the text and all the messages and things like that, and all the user interface is translated into almost as many languages, Spanish and French being the obvious places, and Germany and things like that. But they're all over the world, and they're all written in Delphi. And I wrote, if not now, certainly I wrote the original versions of those programs, and they still are largely unchanged from the versions that I wrote back when Delphi was first released. Nowadays, I work on human resources software and time and attendance software, and we're quite successful. I work in partnership with a company in the UK who are one of the leading companies in that arena. And every weekday, because the number of people we have, number of customers, around about 3.5 to 4.2 million employees who clock in and out and record their working hours and get the payroll calculated using programs that I've written. And they're all written in Delphi, completely Delphi, nothing else. There is one program I think that's probably written in Visual Basic because the particular library we needed was only available in that. We couldn't translate it for technical reasons, but apart from that, everything else is in Delphi. And I also do some things over here. Some of the things are for charities, but also for non-profits, but some other companies as well. In the heart of the USA, for example, there are 500 nurses and hospice staff who literally go and hold the hands of the dying and comfort them in their final moments. And also do things like change dressings on people who've had quite serious operations, amputees and things like that need to have their photographs taken to show the progress of scars healing. I know it's a bit unpleasant and some people might be squeamish about this, but that's the reality for many nurses. They go in the person's home and they change the dressings, and at the same time they need to take a photographic record so that a doctor can later go and look at those photographs and see the progression. Now, they used to use cameras, and there were a plethora of cameras that were a big problem for them because people would lose the cards, or the camera would stop working, or the manufacturer would no longer make that camera because they were pushing through these things. And what they wanted to do was swap to using mobile devices, and in particular iPhones and iPads. So what they didn't want was the iPhones and iPads that were so very good at communicating with the rest of the world, they didn't want them uploading those photographs by accident to somewhere like Facebook or Twitter, or even just sending it amongst their friends. So what they asked me to do was write a special iPhone app, an iPad app, and actually for Microsoft Surface, for a company called Fremont Medical Center as well. All of these apps would securely take the photographs, encrypt them, and then transmit them up to a server for the visiting nurses. And it does that very successfully. It removed all of the interfaces they used to have for plugging in cameras and copying images around, which was very error prone, and also was guaranteed that those images would not appear on Facebook. You cannot do it. You take the photograph and the app puts it in some secure storage. All of that is written in Delphi. It was originally written in Delphi XE2, I believe, and gradually we've upgraded as new features and new versions of Delphi come out. And currently, the current version is written in Delphi 10.3 Rio because we like to keep up to date with the phones. They have over 500 nurses using those devices. And when they merged with the Fremont Medical Center, those people over there already had Microsoft Surface devices, and I was able to take the iPhone app and the iPad app and convert it into a Microsoft Surface app very easily because I'd written it in Delphi. Virtually no changes, a couple of little things where I'd made assumptions on file paths and things like that, but apart from that, it was just a couple of little changes and bing, 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 off it went, and was able to be used elsewhere. This year, based on the success of that secure camera and secure contact app, which is another thing they use, the VNA are going to roll out an iPad app and secure backend server software to manage registration and patient data for every single flu clinic they run in Nebraska, Iowa, and US Midlands. Now, the reason they want to do that is currently they use some forms, electronic forms or paper forms, and I want to cut down on the handling and also increase the response time from people like schools and businesses that are registering to use the flu clinic services of the visiting nurses of the Midlands. So that's another thing. Makes me look good, but actually, the code itself is fairly straightforward with Delphi. And you know what? Delphi is the gift that keeps on giving for me. It's really made my career something stratospheric, really way beyond what I thought would be possible when I was 14 years old and sitting in a very boring physics lesson in awe of this boy that walked across and touched the computer. And that is the software that I've worked on over the years. In the years that Delphi has been released, there are over 10,000 dentists and oral surgeons worldwide who use some patient communication software and practice information software. It shows messages to patients whilst they're waiting. You may have even seen that kind of thing if you've been to the dentist. This is all written in Delphi. I don't work with that company anymore purely because of logistics. I used to be based in their offices back in the UK, but now I'm in the US, as I said before. But over 10,000 dentists and oral surgeons use those. They don't get many problems. In fact, they most of the time their support people are part-time. That's pretty impressive, really, for that many people. A significant proportion of the major grocery chains in the UK or Great Britain track their cleaning staff, which they tend to outsource. They tend not to have their own people. And they log their outsourced security patrol because they tend also not to employ their security staff directly. They use a centralized cloud-based server, which the company I work with host for them. They use various cloud-based providers like Amazon to provide that. All of that software and all of those scanners and their face scanners and biometric scanners, fingerprint scanners, all of that's managed by Delphi programs that I've written. And every month, I can't remember the statistic, but it's several 100,000 transactions are processed, and over a year it's many millions, and I mean millions. I'm not even sure how many are. There's a lot. And they come from over 2,500 biometric scanners, which are face scanners. They record your image. You've seen the kind of programs around that do these sort of things. We don't make the hardware, but we do write all the software. And Delphi allows me to easily write hardware controllers that talk to those biometric scanners and get the information processed up and placed in the right places. They actually have a 20-minute window for a security guard to report back. And in fact, if that 20-minute window is missed, so it's time sensitive, then all sorts of alarms go off and their control center starts panicking that the security guard has been overcome by burglars or robbers or something like that. That's one of those things that Delphi is very, very good at, processing huge amounts of data. It makes me look really clever and good, and I'm not. I'm just a normal person. The right programs. And we've also got programs that control and collate these biometric hand scanners. They take a number of measurements of your hands, so you can actually record your hand on these devices through gloves. So if you work in, say, a bacon factory, for example, where you wear protective gloves, you can actually scan your hand on the hand scanner with the gloves on, and the platen of the hand scanner has got some antibacterial information surface on it. They put the hands in the scanners, and it scans and recognizes them in the same way that a fingerprint does. It takes a number of measurements, like 128 measurements across the fingers and width apart. That all works with Delphi programs as well. It's used everywhere that you can think of where people need secure access to certain information. In the Dockland, London's Dockland, they have turnstiles. The turnstiles, as the staff turn up on this building site, they don't want people stealing things like copper piping, which is very worth a lot of money as scrap, or cabling. And so they have the turnstiles and the the staff clock in and out that way. Same with embassies. Some of the embassies, I'm not allowed to say which embassies because of security reasons, but there are some embassies around the world that also use these hand scanners and Delphi programs in the background as well. And airside catering services. If you go and get your lunch on a plane during your flight, those are actually prepared outside by specialist companies. And two of those companies that I'm aware of, the two largest ones in the UK, actually use our software and scanners to control this staff, because airside, the staff actually have to have a passport, for example. And even on the beautiful island of Vanuatu, which is in the absolute middle of the ocean, it's a fantastically beautiful place. Their airport, all their staff use the hand scanners as well. And again, they're using Delphi. Nobody knows. Delphi is that little secret thing that chugs away in the background and provides all these services. And for less important, less secure things, my daughter's former high school marching band, and if you're from Texas or you know Texas well, you realize that high school marching bands are American football and marching bands are almost a second religion down here. They have hundreds of kids because the school has something like 5,000 students. They have hundreds of kids registering for the band banquet, which is a big deal every year, where they all get awarded prizes and they all have a dance and there's a disco and things like that. Their tickets are all recorded and the website is all managed and processed and even rendered by Delphi. In fact, the website is using TMS components called WebCore, which I definitely recommend, and the back end is using some custom REST services and things like that that's written by myself. And then at the other end, there's a server that runs a Delphi program that receives all the information from the middleware and produces the correct entries in various databases and things like that. All very easy to do. I think it took me like less than a day, maybe 2 days to actually write that. Not only is Delphi very powerful, but it actually can be very quick once you know how to use it properly. And that's only in the past few years. It makes me very, very productive. It makes me look like I'm some kind of superstar, and I'm really not. I'm just a normal person. I like sitting around watching TV. I like, walking my dogs and things like that. I'm not some kind of maniac. I do work a lot, but that's because I'm self-employed. So if I don't work, I don't get paid. But the thing that's really good about Delphi is it runs well and keeps on running with virtually no fuss. We don't get problems with incompatibilities between Windows. When Windows 10 came out, we didn't have to make any changes to any of our programs. It just worked. And in fact, the same programs probably still work on Windows XP. I couldn't swear to that because we've added newer features like notifications and things like that. But certainly some parts of it would still work on some of the very oldest parts of Windows. It's pretty incredible. Same with mobile devices. We can support mobile devices back almost as far as the operating system manufacturer cares to do. Android and iOS being the ones in control of that kind of information, but we can go back quite a way and support that with virtually no fuss. We do not have lots of support calls, and in fact, this means that the people I write software for can be fairly confident that they only need minimal support staff. Programs go wrong. People install them wrongly, the operating system has some kind of issue, hardware stops working, and those are the most common things that happen for support. But as far as the program's concerned, once it's matured and debugged, it works, it keeps on working. And the most important thing there is, with minimal support staff and minimal installation staff, it makes it much more profitable for the people I work for and trouble-free as well. So, what that translates to, in my case, is 25 years of continual work where people keep coming back and I have a long-term relationship. The longest client I have, I've been working for 22 years off and on. And they keep coming back because my programs work and they keep on working and they make them money. And this is Delphi. It's all Delphi that's doing that. Now, that lack of drama can mean a bad thing. It can mean that Delphi is invisible. Nobody needs to complain loudly because it just keeps on working. Think about that. Delphi just keeps on working. And because of that, I keep on working too. So Delphi, I want to say thanks very much for 25 years of making me look great. I really appreciate it. Honestly, I do. And that's why I act as an MVP, because I believe in what the product does. And I have no problem in telling people, look at this again, look at Delphi again, look at the programming language, look at the capabilities that it offers, and believe that you can actually produce some stuff, because I can do it and I'm nothing special. You could be a better programmer than me, and you could be successful too at what you do. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch, please do. You can find me on about.me/Ian Barker, or please follow me on Twitter. I like Twitter, I use it a lot. And you can contact me on there and we can chat about Delphi things and stuff like that. Find me at twitter.com/punctuation or @punctuation. Anyway, happy birthday, Delphi. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.